started, and I hope some more join us, Dr. Revis. But well, this is getting close to our three classes. But let me pull up the agenda. And again, you can find this in your Blackboard show under week 5. This is basically what we're going to try to stick to tonight, but there's a lot packed into this. So we need to stay on task and just pay close attention because there's some new things that we're going to share with you tonight. But Dr. Revis, if you would begin.
Okay, well, welcome to week 5. It is, for me, it's very hard to believe that we're already in week 5. And after this week, you're going to see it slow down, I think, for a couple of weeks. Not meaning that you're going to take a break by no means, but you will see things start to slow down just a little bit. And then we'll pick back up with the app because you're almost through with the AAPSL. Well, you got one more task after task 4. I've got some shout outs that I want to give on task 3. May I do that, Dr. Stedman?
Absolutely.
I want to commend just outstanding work or these 5 people: Jasmine Brooks, Emmy Matthews, Brandon Reeves, Melody Williams, and Catherine Wolf. You guys had some almost just perfect work. So thank you so much for all of you. You're working really hard. You're turning in quality work, and I do appreciate that. Timla, I believe you need to mute.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And then let's not forget our norms for tonight. Again, cameras on if at all possible, and hold your comments until the end, and we'll work through everything. And we just ask that you give us your full attention for this 50 minutes to an hour. And then, of course, we will give you opportunities at the end to ask any clarifying questions. So with that said, Dr. Stedman, it's yours.
Okay, and again, I'm not going to, because I've got classes, so I will say that I was again highly pleased with the quality of the work that came in this week. But there's one I want to just mention. It was funny, and I'm going to call you out, Tanya Allison. Tanya sent me a message, and she said, you gave me 100. She says, is there anything that I'm supposed to do? She says, I'm just so happy. I never got the 100. That's my first 100 in this at the first time. So it just that tickled me. And the thing I thought about this, I don't care how old we get, we're still children at heart. And those things should mean a lot to us. But anyway, Tanya, you made my day whenever I read that comment from you. But overall, and the work has come back. The editing has come back in a very timely manner. I have already cleared several 3s already and told them to move on to task 4. So what we're going to go over tonight. So I've been very pleased with that. Overall, the quality of the peer review process has been good, Dr. Revis. There's some that you slacked off a little bit, but again, overall, very pleased with it. But this is what we're going to be doing. We're not going to camp out on task 3 or the peer reviews anymore. We're moving on. I'm going to come back to Blackboard reminders, and APA may be mentioned when we get to task 4, Dr. Revis. We may have some things that we need to talk about there. But one of the major things we're going to talk about tonight is your first Zoom assignment, and that's with the AAPSL Research and Development. And as a reminder, and then we're going to go into task 4. And then we're going to just, if there's any internship reminders, we'll mention that at the end, and we'll go into the question and answer time. But as a let me pull this back up. I closed it out too soon. Let me minimize that. Dr. Revitz is going to begin with the next presentation, but as a reminder, I just want to point out again, in your weekly class, in your weekly assignments, in your weekly schedule, this is where the independent reading should have been occurring. And it's a lot of reading too. What Dr. Revitz is going to be sharing tonight, this is, and she'll emphasize this some more, but this is where we will begin seeing evidence of if you're reading it or if you're not reading it, because this will come out in what Dr. Revitz is going to be sharing in just a minute. But again, just because we don't mention it every week doesn't mean that it's not important, doesn't mean that it's that you should be doing it. It's independent. And you know yourself, we could not add one more thing onto our plate on Tuesday nights because we're covering so much already. And that's why we don't camp out with the reading, but you're expected to do it. So with that in mind, Dr. Revitz, I'm going to stop share and turn it over to you.
Okay, so we're getting ready to talk about your very first Zoom team discussion, or what I like to call professional dialogue. So this slide can be found in week 5. And let's look at your responsibilities and expectations for this Zoom team meeting. Now, first of all, you need to decide who is going to be what we call the Zoom master. And somebody would just volunteer out of your group to coordinate and prepare and to facilitate this Zoom session. Now, each of you will have an opportunity throughout the semester to do this, but so you might as well go ahead and get it over with if you wish. So these are called professional dialogues, and I'm going to give you an idea of some things you can do for this first Zoom session. This is about the AAPSL research and development, what you've been doing in tasks 1, 2, and 3, and looking forward to what you're going to be doing in task 4 after this evening. So, first of all, the Zoom master would want to create an agenda, just like you do when you facilitate a PLC. And the first thing on that agenda, if you don't mind, to introduce each, or let each member of the PLC introduce themselves. And that, again, is just so we can make sure that when we are viewing the video and reviewing it, that we give you credit for what we think you said, and not giving it to somebody else in the Zoom session. So just be sure you introduce yourselves. Dr. Stedman and I will view these Zoom videos. You will record it and we will view it, and you will all get a grade based on your contributions that you provided during this particular session. So starting with what you did in your first PLC, or even the organization PLC in task 1, you know, want to ask each member to talk about your experience leading your PLC. Is this the model your school uses? If not, how did you introduce this model? Share what went well, what you wish you would have done differently, and what you learned from leading your PLC. So, you know, because there are a lot of things to talk about, I would just say, if you were a Zoom master, these are some conversation dialogue starters that you can use and to help prepare everybody for the Zoom meeting. Now, It's easier if you, as a Zoom master, will decide how you're going to share in these Zoom meetings. Are we going to go in a certain order? Are you going to allow people just to pop in? What are you going to do? The most successful Zoom sessions that I found is when there is some kind of order or method to your sharing, because lots of times then some people will lay back and won't say much, other people will dominate. So we want to make sure everybody is getting a good opportunity to share within the session.
And
So
Dr.
the
Revis,
first,
the Zoom master needs to remember you are the leader of this session, so it's your responsibility to try to make sure that everybody is doing what Dr. Revis just talked about.
yes, and we're also going to be looking at your leadership as the Zoom master and how you are facilitating a group of adults. Because remember now, as an administrator, you're a teacher of adults. So where your readings come in, you have lots of readings about PLC meetings. And so when you're answering these questions, you can incorporate things that we didn't even talk about in class, and that lets us know that you've been doing your readings. And then task 2, you did your data dive. Again, share what went well, what you learned about available data. For some of you, this may have been your very first time looking and examining and disaggregating school performance and growth data. Did you have to redirect your PLC discussion at any time? Usually in this data dive, sometimes people will want to, your PLC may want to get on an attendance issue or a behavioral issue or something like that. And if they did that, how did you redirect them? And then the last bullet
Revis,
is
may I say
you.
something there? Going
Of
back
course.
again, if you're the Zoom master, let's say Tamala is the Zoom master for her group. Tamala, if you see that your group is chasing rabbits or going in a different direction, it's your responsibility to pull it back together in a timely manner to move forward, or just remind them why you're there if that happens. So just remember, that's your responsibility as the leader.
And then finally, how did you move your team to consensus of deciding the most pressing need? Sometimes it's not just a facilitating of information, but it's how do you pull a team toward consensus? And then your task 3 was about your research. What went well when you shared your research to your PLC? What would you do differently? And share what you're thinking about moving towards in the development of your action plan, which will be task 4. So all of these tasks build upon each other. And again, you should incorporate some of your readings to support some things you did, support some things you learned, or maybe support what you wish you would have done differently. But we're looking for that professional dialogue, and we don't want it to be a gripe session. And if you're not careful, it could become a gripe session, particularly with this last slide. And I hesitate even to put this in here because this is where it can become a gripe session very quickly. What has been your biggest challenge? And I know what it is. It's lack of time. We know that. So don't camp out there as much as right here. Share how you think you've grown in your leadership skills. That's what this class is about, developing your leadership skills and preparing you to be a school leader. And then anything else you wish to share. Now, here's the thing. Everybody has a free Zoom account, but it's only 30 minutes.
It's 40.
Is it 40? Okay, it's
Yes.
40 minutes. Guys, if you're well prepared, if the Zoom master is well prepared, and the team members are well prepared, 40 minutes should be enough time. Okay. If you run out of time, then you'll have to shut it down, do a new link, and a new Zoom session.
Dr. Revis,
We-
I'm going to say this though. It's going to take most of that 40 minutes. If you turn it in and you've only been on there 15 or 20 minutes, then you really have not done this activity the justice that it needs.
Right. And on the other end of the continuum, if it goes an hour, you've not been efficient in moving your PLC forward.
Right.
So both the Zoom master and all PLC members need to come prepared. Have your agenda, talk about how you're going to share. It will take, if you do this, it will take you a lot of time. If everybody shares something in this prompt, and then everybody shares something in this prompt, and then everybody, that'll take you forever. Let one person talk about all the things you want to talk about within one task. Okay. And then that way you can move it along, give people equal opportunity to share, and you're not dragging it out so long.
Because with working on this, you do want to maybe have at least 5 minutes at the end to be able to talk about the task 4 that you're working on this week to see, to help each other out with that if there's any questions about that. So,
Okay.
okay, Dr. Revis, I'm going to let me show them something else as it relates to this activity before we move on. Okay, now remember, it's the Zoom team captain responsibility to set up the Zoom meeting, send the link for your team to join. Again, you need to get consensus on that. And the thing is, if there's 4 on your team and one says I can't, do that, you've got to. It can't be about one person. So at some point you have to say this is what we're going to do it. Now, I would recommend that you are prepared to do this hopefully Thursday night, and I'm going to tell you why. We don't have a coaching session on Thursday night. You're used to coming on Thursday night already. That would be a perfect time to be able to come together as a team and do that. Okay,
And guys,
I'm sorry,
if
I
you
don't mean to interrupt. I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but I'm kind of confused on who we're supposed to be meeting with, our actual PLC or our team members.
These are your team members in this program.
Okay, that's what I was, sorry. Thank
That's
you.
okay. That's okay, Adrian. Go ahead, Dr. Revis, while I'm pulling this up. Okay.
I don't know what I was going
Yeah,
to say
but that's
now. I'm
okay.
sorry.
Remember, you have to send the link to each of your team members. You establish the time, then once the meeting has occurred, just like you get from Dr. Revis and me after every class on Tuesday night and when we have coaching sessions, you get the YouTube video for that night's session. You're responsible for uploading that video and turning it into a YouTube, and you send that link to each one of your members. Now, if there's 4 people in that group, you're going to submit for a final grade the same link. When it comes to us for a grade, it will be the same link for all 4 of you. Now, what we're going to do is, let's say Adrian submits hers first in her group. Well, if there's 4 people in her group, I don't need to look at the other 3. It's the same video. So what I'm going to do, whoever sends it first in that group, I will watch that video, take notes while I'm watching it. Then I will go back and give a grade to each of you based on your participation and the scholarly discussion that occurred. And then whoever is the Zoom master, it will carry a little extra weight that time because we're looking at your leadership in that as well. So where do I put it, Dr. Stebbin, Dr. Revis, whenever I get through with it? Okay, you've already been submitting to Dr. Revis and me. Let me find it. Okay, AAPSL completed peer review Dropbox. That's where you've been submitting to us for a grade, your 2 peer reviews each week. Click on that and I want to show you something. go all the way down to the bottom. What do you see? Except it says 1 and 2 is all of the work you've been doing with the AAPSL up to this point. This is where you will upload that same video and you will submit it to Blackboard for a grade. So you scroll all the way down on the same page where you have been submitting your 2 peer reviews for us to grade each week. Okay. And by the way, you only have 2 more to do for the AAPSL, and you'll have a break from having to do peer reviews for a few weeks. But this is where you will submit that assignment, and Dr. Revison again we'll view if there's 4 teams, we'll look at 4 videos, and we will take notes on those 4 videos, and that's how you will get your grades. Okay.
So, number 1, make sure you attend the Zoom. If something happens, I mean, if you miss your Zoom, I don't know how you're going to make that up.
And
So,
it's not your team's responsibility to go back and do it a second time for one person.
so the Zoom master, you need to try to be collaborative in scheduling that Zoom. But everybody's very used to being on Thursday night. I would suggest trying to keep that Thursday night time. But it is up to you and up to your availability. But number 1, don't miss it, because I don't know how you're going to make it up.
Now,
And
and they may decide they want to do it Saturday. That's entirely
that's up to you.
Just
Yeah.
remember that this is due Sunday night by 6 o'clock. So you've got to do this week.
And everybody has to do a submission. Everybody in your team will submit the same Zoom link right there where Dr. Stedman just showed you at the bottom of the peer reviews. That's the only way we can give you a grade. If you don't submit it, it's a 0. We can't give you a grade.
Okay. And if you have any other questions think about it, you can ask them at the end, but it's dry. That's what it is. So, but we'll address them at the end. Okay. That leads us to task 4. And this is the action plan. And everything that you have done up to this point leads you to this moment. Remember in task 1, it was all about, what is a PLC, forming your team, meeting with them, setting norms, et cetera, et cetera. Task 2, remember that you did your data dive, and you culminated with your most pressing need. And then task 3 that you've just finished, remember that's when you did research based on that most pressing need. You did an annotated bibliography. Dr. Revis, how did you say that last week? I like the way you distinguish between the literature review and the annotated bibliography. Say that again.
Right. The literature review, I think, always comes first, because that's where you're trying to research the root causes of, whatever.
Root causes. I couldn't remember that. The root causes. That's what I like.
Yeah. And then your annotated bibliography is about searching for solutions.
Right. And I remember we got an email from a student that said that those 2 distinctions made it clear for them. And I think for a lot of students, actually, it made it more clear for me, because I don't think you had said that previously. And I liked that terminology.
Thank you.
That leads us to task 4. All of this work now, you've identified the problem. You've done some research about, these are some possible solutions to the problem. Now you've got to put a plan in place to try to resolve the problems, or whatever the problem is. That's where we are today. So prompt 1 of task 4 is the development of your action plan for your identified problem. You will first you're going to explain in a narrative form what is an action plan? What is the purpose of an action plan? That's your introductory narrative that you start with. And then there's going to be 7 headings that must be individually addressed relative to your identified problem for the action plan. So in the first heading is going to be the importance of the action plan, research based. And you see that it's in yellow. So that is your heading. And then you're going to do narrative work based on that. Your narrative work will address the purpose of the action plan based on what the research says. You would need to reference the research here. We're not looking for your opinion. We want to know, what does the research say? And Dr. Revis and I talked earlier. Again, I think the magic, we need to go back to that magic number. I think you need at least a minimum of 3 references for each of these sections to be able to give it a research background where research is required. Would you say so, Dr. Revis? And this is an example. I'm not going to read through it all. Just again, an action plan is important, blah, 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 according to Savetsky, 2015, and then it leads into that. So, you know, you're talking about what is an action plan, what is the purpose of an action plan, and you can even say, this is a good time to go back and to restate your most pressing need in there somewhere as it leads into the next part. Your first of those 7 headings is going to be alignment with student learning outcomes. Now, and we've explained exactly what you're supposed to do here. Alignment with student learning. Your action plan must align completely with student learning outcomes as measured by test scores, whether it's the EOC, EOG, well, anything that would be as benchmark testing, and any of those other programs in math and reading and science or whatever that you would have that has an assessment with it, that you can use, and you're to narratively explain that alignment in this section. And let's look briefly how it begins. Again, this is just an example. It's not all inclusive. It's enough to get you started. And this person said, through data analysis and collaborative discussions, which you've already done, my PLC and I determined that our school's most pressing need is, and they talked about that, multiple data points, and you're going back, you're actually pulling information here from what you've already done. You're reflecting back on the work that you've already done in previous tasks to a large degree here. And that's what you do at that point. Dr. Revis, anything else you can think of? The programs, like if it's Peer Deck, anything that you're using, those programs, they should probably, or not probably, they should be mentioned here in this section. Dreambox. Revis, can you think of anything else in that section?
I don't think so, but again, I want to see what your learning targets are. Now remember, you're talking about how to build a plan of action. What are you going to do at this point once you've been through all this information gathering, research? How are you going to put it into action?
Now, every section will not require research. Some of them will, some of them will not require you having to put 3 references there for research that you're doing. This is one of those sections. So Dr. Revis, would you take the next section?
Okay. So narratively in this section, what you're going to talk about are identifying your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals and objectives. So you have your action plan, and you may say that short-term is that we're going to make a presentation to all our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers who teach reading. And we're going to present this new online tool, or we're going to present some strategies that we feel like will close the gap, close whatever gap or meet whatever pressing need that you've identified. That might be a short term, that you do a presentation. A midterm may be that you are looking at checkpoints along the way. I want to make sure that, by November, mid-November, that I'm seeing this new online tool being used consistently and pervasively throughout the grade levels. And then your long term might be something about taking it to the next level or whatever.
And it may be that you can finish it the end of the year, but this may be something that you have to carry into another school year. Long term
Right.
can't go that far. However, as much as possible, you want to see the progress you can make for this particular year with this. Notice that what I've identified in green. This is where they talked about MAP, measures of academic progress, aligned with this idea of using enrichment to support the core. The short-term goal is, and they've talked about it. Then let's look. Oh, Danny. I apologize. I hit the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, here we go. I'll try to be more careful. Okay. And then if you notice, then therefore the short-term goal is a realistic and attainable goal. Then they go in, the midterm goal is, they've talked about that. And notice how they've identified some of the programs that they're using. And then as a long-term goal, the PLC determined. So they've identified at least one of each, a short-term goal, a midterm goal, and a long-term goal, with the work that they're doing. Okay, the next heading is specific activities aligned with the designated goals and objectives. What you're going to do now is you're going to identify all aligned activities that will be used to meet those short-term, midterm, and long-term goals and objectives for your action plan. What am I going to do? What are we going to do as a school? The activities that's going to align with the testing, student achievement, whatever it takes to move the pendulum for progress, short-term, midterm, and long-term. Dr. Revis, I would say that they need to have, they need to have 5 really good activities for the action plan. So I would say a minimum of 5 activities. Wouldn't you?
I would.
A minimum of 5 activities. And that's what they've done here. Notice what I've got in green. The use of Dreambox will work, and it goes about, I want to talk about that. Through enrichment, students will. It is important to note that students will receive direct and small group remediation in their core block as well. And it just got Mastery Connect. It goes on to talk about other things, but this is where you talk specifically about those things that your team and you have identified that's going to be implemented in this plan of action to move the pendulum with your identified problem. Dr. Revis, anything else you can say there?
I think that's good.
Okay, move on to the next one, Dr. Revis.
All right. And then your next heading is going to be talking about what are your indicators of success measurement techniques. Now, when we see that word measurement techniques, we want to see actual numbers. What kind of numbers are going to tell you that implementation of these activities were successful? So, and you see some data here, at least 65% on their formative and summative assessments from September through April. Okay, those are some measurable indicators of success.
Dr. Revis, I like what it says here. How do you know you have successfully reached a short-term, midterm, and long-term goal and objectives for your action plan? That's what all this is about. Okay, and notice here, the key indicator of success will be, it goes on to talk about, and notice in here is what Dr. Revis said. You see the percentages? Numbers should be embedded in this section. Therefore, targeting our most pressing need in 8th grade math is most supported by, and it goes on and explains that, the open up curriculum, which is used through workbooks, will additionally, and it goes on and talks about those things. Okay, and the next section is clarification of roles and responsibilities. That's pretty much in layman terms, who has been assigned to do what, and what have they been assigned to do? You name the people involved. Again, Dr. Revis, you're the student in this program, and so it's your responsibility to take a leadership role in this. So in this action plan, it should show you doing fidelity checks along the way with the teachers involved and the activities involved that you are proposing in this action plan. It can't run independently without, there's an old saying that says what gets monitored gets done. So your responsibility as the leader, and when you're a principal or assistant principal in a school, that's going to be your responsibility. You can't just turn them loose and not ever pay attention to it. You've got to monitor things with fidelity, but you're not the only one. Maybe you've got, maybe your principal wants to do something to help. I would hope that they would want to see, what's going on as a part of this action plan. The literacy coach in your school, an assistant principal. So again, what are they going to do, and who's going to do what? You name them there. And then this section goes on and talks about those roles and who's going to do what. Dr. Revis is going to talk about that more in a minute when we introduce the actual action plan. And Dr. Revis, this is the one that we have to send back more times than we would like. So I hope that you're going to change. You've changed a lot of things for us already this semester because you're a smart group. So I hope that Dr. Revis, they're going to listen carefully, and I hope that we don't have to send any of them back because this part's not done correctly.
Okay, so you've got a heading that's going to say formative and summative assessment criteria. In our teaching world with students, formative always means just those check-ins that you either do formally or informally along the way to see if your students and check for their understanding and see if their understanding, is it time for you to move on? Is it time for you to back up? Well, what do you need to do? How do I adjust my instruction? Summative assessments, we all think about summative being those end of grade, end of year assessments, end of semester, whatever. For purposes of this, formative assessments equals what are the adults doing? Formative assessment equals what are the adults doing? How do we know that the adults are carrying out this plan and are doing what they say they're going to do? And that's where you have to look at things like walkthrough monitoring, whether that be some schools call it walkthrough, some schools call it instructional rounds. It could be those kinds of things. I hope you guys are doing those in your schools, and those could be done by you. Those could be done by your leadership team. It could be done by grade level chairs, whatever. But it's monitoring the implementation. on the part of adults. And that's very different from how we typically talk and think about formative assessments.
So
Some other
and
time,
again, just remember, formative has nothing to do with the students. Remember, you're preparing to be a principal of a school. And remember, principals don't teach students, principals teach teachers. So always remember that your job, your focus is on student achievement, but you're working with the teachers to improve student achievement. You yourself are not going to improve student achievement, but the teachers that you are working with under your leadership will help student achievement improve in your school.
and so you can see in the examples, you're going to talk about summative assessments. Now, the summative assessments will be student performance data or growth data, but your summative again is about teachers. How do I know teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing? And as you can see in the examples, they're doing weekly walkthroughs and look fors on a Google Doc. Additionally, what else are they doing?
Every 2 weeks, the PLC will meet and review the results from the walkthrough data. It can be, let's say, for instance, if you have Study Island, the reports that are generated from Study Island, fidelity checks there. You just don't let them do a program and it's not monitored by administration. You got to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. That the online resource that you are proposing for this action plan, once they're trained and once it's implemented, how do you know that it's having a positive impact at all? There needs to be, again, it goes back to the short term, long term, and you need to look short term. What are they doing? Midterm, what are they doing? There need to be fidelity checks along the way, and that's with any of your proposed activities. There should be, again, somebody or somebody's checking, monitoring the teachers, and when they monitor, what does that monitoring consist of? Is it a walkthrough? Again, is it a conference? Is it what is that going to consist of?
And then they go on. And then they go on to talk about some of the summative assessments as well. And again, those are student assessments.
Here it is. There's the online platform Dreambox will be a key support of both formative, and they go on to talk about how it can be used with looking at the students, but looking at the teachers, how they are implementing the Dreambox curriculum. So now, once each of the 7 topics have been narratively addressed, the candidate will take the same information. They're going to put it into a graphic organizer that Dr. Revis is going to talk about now, so I'm not going to steal your thunder.
Well, I just always say, let's see. Can I share my screen right quick?
Let me move this down so it'll be at the right place whenever
Okay.
I come back up. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Okay, it's yours now.
So I always like thinking about the action plan as a graphic organizer. And how we teach our students, always start with a graphic organizer before you start writing. So when my recommendation is during your PLC meeting that you're going to have this week to develop this action plan, that this is what you work from. You are developing an action plan based on your area of biggest need. Here's where your activities will go, specific activities, and we'll show you an example. This is the timeline. Again, this is where we would see, we should be able to see your short-term and long-term goals, persons responsible, who's going to be responsible for making sure for not only implementing it, but making sure that it is, well, no, here is who's going to be responsible for implementing. What resources do we need? Here's where you talk about the formative assessment method. This is the monitoring. Formative is adult monitoring. Summative would be for your students. This is your goal. That's your end result. And here are your indicators of success. So I would suggest having your team work through the graphic organizer. And then you take that graphic organizer and you write the narrative after your team has met, of course. So let's show them a good
Can I
example.
say one thing before we go through?
Of course.
That could actually be money, but not just money. You know, you've got to have a plan. Is it going to be, are you going to ask for Title I monies for that? You know, other pots of money that you've got. And remember, it needs to be a reasonable request, you know, with whatever you're asking. When you have your meeting with your PLC, you need to have already given some thought to this and go in with some ideas and things to put on the table with them. Don't go in there not having thought about this. You need to have some things already thought about, and then you can add to it, you know, once you meet with your team and they.
And the specific activities, guys, we said a minimum of 5. I don't want you to do more than 7 because then you can't get it done.
Right.
But I would say a good point is a target is 5. But think about if you're going to implement a new online tool, you're going to have professional development. That's a specific activity, right? And it may be that you're going to do more than just implement the online tool. Maybe it's to incorporate some of those instructional strategies that you gleaned when you did your annotated bibliography. That also could be in there.
And I will tell you, now we're going to look at it first. We're going to make sure that your specific activities are aligned with the identified need. You can't just make up something. That activity must be aligned with what your most pressing need is and with the research that you've done. And the end result is, will that specific activity bring results? That's your hope, you know, that it will do that. So okay, I'm going to share again. Dr.
So let's
Revis.
look at it. Yeah, let's look at a good example.
Okay. This is an example we have. I'm going to show 2. We'll show 2. This is an example from their helpful hints document, but then I'll pull up another one in just a moment to give them 2 to look from, because you have access to this. Dr. Revis.
Well, I can't read it. It's so small,
Okay,
but you can
okay,
see.
Okay.
But you can see specific activities. That second increase. I can't read it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me do this. I'll come back to this one in a minute. Let me come to, and I'll be honest with you, let me do this. The specific activity, and I can read it from here, Dr. Revis.
Okay, yeah, please.
Remediation, the specific activity, remediation. 5th grade teachers will have at least 2 remediation sessions per week. Okay, the timeline, 30 minutes for 2 times each week. Persons responsible, 5th grade teachers. Resources needed. Teachers need to have a concrete remediation plan that includes student groups and times. The remediation activities need to be planned previously. Students and teachers will need a device. Formative assessment method. Teachers will need to add their remediation plan, schedule, group of students and activities to their lesson plan folder on Google Drive. So that means whoever is monitoring lesson plans, that's where they're going. That's the fidelity check right there for the adult that should be implementing this specific activity. And then the summative assessment, attend remediation groups and complete a mini assessment to prove mastery. And then you could also look at student work with that as well. Then it has identified a short-term goal there. Students will attend remediation sessions in order to participate in remediation or in reteaching. Students should obtain at least 70% on mini assessment to reach mastery. And then lastly, indicator of success. Achieve mastery on mini assessment given after 2 remediation sessions. So
Now, Dr. Stebbin, if I could just add this, in that column, indicators of success, I like to see a percentage or a number target.
mhm,
And I'll tell you why. That's concrete. That's something that teachers and adults and students can shoot for. Okay. Because if you just say achieve mastery, well, what is mastery? If it's 70%, put that in there. Okay.
and if you say if they are at, let's say they are already at, let's say they're at 55% mastery. If you say that they're going to reach 70% mastery, then you're setting them up, you're setting everybody up for failure. That's probably not going to happen. You need to look at incrementally making progress. So if it's a short-term goal, Dr. Revis, I would say 5% is a high number, but 3 to 5% is probably the best increment that you need to make making incremental steps. Wouldn't you think so?
I would think so. And, over in that column, indicators of success, you can put a short-term indicator, maybe an increment of 3%, a midterm, an increment of 8%, so whatever. You can put it incrementally as well. But there is something psychologically when you put a number,
It does.
people can latch onto that. They can hook onto it.
Right. And another thing, Dr. Revis, make sure that when you are required to use this format for your action plan, do not deviate from it. It must be the same action plan, and these headings have to be the same ones in the same order. Do not deviate from this. All you do is fill in the blanks. Okay.
And you're going to use this template several times during your program. You'll use the same template when we get to the AAPSL. So again, I think it's easier and quicker to have your team plan from the graphic organizer.
Okay.
But as Dr. Stedman said, don't go in there without some things to throw out as conversation starters. Okay.
Right, let me move down on this. Dr. Revis. Okay. Okay, Dr. Revis, we're in prompt 2 now.
All right. Task 4 has 2 prompts. Some of you seem to kind of get the first one thoroughly and then kind of stop or don't do as strongly on the prompt 2. But in prompt 2, you've got to do several things. Number 1, you do have to share your action plan with your principal and leadership team. And this probably, again, won't happen this week. All right. But that should be the only thing that does not happen. So we would say that it could be videotaped, but it's not required. You must have evidence of the meeting where you're presenting a slideshow, a slide deck, and or a picture of you presenting, and you will need an agenda. Remember, you have to have agendas for every time you present to your admin team or you're presenting to your PLC. Now, if your principal is part of your PLC, then again, you've got to make that clear. The evaluators are looking for that presentation to your admin team. And if it's not there, excuse me?
It's in the rubric. When
Yeah.
you are evaluated by the outside evaluator, it's in their rubric.
Right. Now, your principal may say, well, we're not going to do this plan, or we don't have the funds, or, we're already doing something I want to follow through with, that's okay. Don't get your feelings hurt if the principal says we just can't do it right now. But again, this is about teaching you the process of what we've been doing all through this AAPSL plan. There's some narrative there about scheduling that meeting with the PLC members and the principal,
Right.
and so on and so forth.
You just talk about your meeting. You can talk about your presentation to your team and then your presentation to your administration in this section. And then there's, I mean, other things that you may, other figures that this is the action plan presentation. But Dr. Revis, before they do actually present, they've got some more narrative work that's got to be done too.
You
So let's
do a couple
talk
more
about that.
things.
Yeah.
And, designing an action plan is a huge part of a culminating activity. But now you got to figure out how to put it into practice as a school leader. You did this wonderful plan. You feel like you've got a lot of support among your PLC. How do you take it to the full staff? How do you build efficacy with that staff? How do you get buy-in? So we're going to talk about that at this point. So the first section, or the next section, excuse me, in prompt 2 is building efficacy. Here's another one. It says, what does the research say about building efficacy? So it's not what you're going to do, it's what the research says you need to do if you want to build efficacy. And we would expect 3 references on efficacy, teacher efficacy. Now, don't forget some of those readings in your syllabus and agenda. Those things can be some of your resources, and anything else you find in the course shell. This one, we only required, I think, 1, but we've moved that to 3 resources now. Again, you're going to have to remember.
This actually has more than 1.
Okay.
It has more than
And,
1. Dr. Revis, I want one of those resources to be the seminal research for efficacy is, and the reason I know I lived him for 3 or 4 years because I did my dissertation on efficacy. But Albert, write this name down, Albert Bandura, Bandura. He needs to be one of those references that you make for teacher efficacy. Albert Bandura. Okay.
all right, the
Could
next
you spell that
heading,
again?
Albert Bandura, Bandura. Dr. Revis, go ahead. I'll put it in the chat box, his
Okay.
name.
All right, the next heading is strategies for sustained growth. All right, so again, this one's about research, correct, Dr. Stedman? We don't want to know we don't want to know about what you're going to do. We want to know what the research says you should do. Back it up by research. And so, how many new programs or new plans do we throw out there on teachers all the time? And we don't ever talk about how do we sustain it? How do we keep it growing? Because it takes teachers, whenever you have a change in your curriculum, you can expect it's going to take a teacher 3 years to really know, understand, and be able to teach that curriculum with any sort of confidence and fidelity and those kinds of things. So we're talking about, how do we sustain the growth? How do we keep the momentum up on new initiatives? So you want to have at least 3 resources here.
Okay. And then the last one.
The last section is about, this is about your issues concerning diversity. And of course, you've probably discussed this in your PLC when you've disaggregated data. A lot of you are looking at some very specific groups and subgroups of students. So what are the issues in dealing with students with disabilities, ESL, migrant children, so on and so forth? You know, how are you going to deal with this diverse group of students in your action plan? Don't forget gifted learners too.
Right.
There.
That could be a myriad of many areas of diversity. Your school, Adrian, your school is totally different than Tamla's school. So what you see with issues in diversity could be probably completely different from Tamla's in some ways. So it's okay to be different when you're doing this. All of you have issues probably with exceptional children. ESL is a big issue anywhere you go, but there may be some other things that you're looking at as well.
And so this is just how your PLC feels like the plan is going to address those issues of diversity. And then next is,
but it's not. Go ahead.
And the next is about resources. Remember, you have a column in your plan about resources. And don't forget that includes human resources and fiscal or financial resources. So, you know, are we gonna take some money that we used to use for this other program that nobody's interested in using anymore, or we don't think fits our needs anymore, and spend it on something else? Or is it a program that's free? A lot of you selected some free resources just because they were free. Well, not just because, but sometimes that speaks volumes if you have limited resources. But talk about narratively your resources and how you're going, what resources you have and what you're going to use needed in that action plan. This goes back to your action plan.
Dr. Revis, now all of the things that we're talking about now, the narrative work, these are all going to be educated talking points when you present to your administration. You should point out these things. In other words, when you come with resources, you're making a recommendation and why. Now, like Dr. Revis said earlier, we hope that they're going to say, God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But they may not. And if they don't feel let down about it, you've done what you were required to do. Most of the time they do embrace it, but we have had cases where they didn't, right, Dr. Revis? So
that's right.
You will have done your part when you present. It's left up to them whether they let you move forward as a PLC and address this year. Okay, Dr. Revis?
And then the next section is about establishing a shared vision. Again, we're looking at research here. What does the research say is the process or a good way to establish that shared vision of learning? This means getting everybody on board. What is the vision? And hopefully our vision is, and this is one of your texts, Ubun text.
Right, that's what I wanted to point out there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that can be one of your resources. And some of those other things that we have already put in your Blackboard shell. So how do you do that? How do you get everybody on board that, number one, there's a need for growth and improvement, and number two, this is how we're going to get there.
And then lastly, you always are going to have a reference section, APA style, and there's going to be lots of references in task 4, lots of them. And then you're always going to have a appendices heading, and you're going to have a minimum of your meeting agenda, but there's going to be other things that you need to include under the appendices for task 4 as well. When submitting your work, make sure you submit task 1 and task 2 at the same, a prompt 1 and prompt 2. It shouldn't be task. Prompt 1 and prompt 2 at the same time. Use your template and follow the example provided. Okay. Got Rev Live about talked out. I know
I have two. I have two.
we
That's
shared
a lot of
lot.
information.
It's a lot of information. Again, there is work that you need to do in advance of meeting with your PLC. There needs to be some planning on your part, and you need to go in there intentionally with some things and show and prove your leadership with this team, because you've got to do a lot in a quick turnaround time with this. Okay, Tanya? Can't hear you, Tanya.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this morning our PLC decided to go with Nearpod because it's provided by the district. But even in our PLC meeting, only one of the teachers knew anything about it. And so this morning I asked permission from my principal to do a Google form with like 4 questions to ask about the usage and integration of the teachers who are currently on our staff. Can that be included as one of my action plan steps? Or is that not an action plan step? It's more informational just for me to know how we're going to do our presentation, how we're going to integrate it, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a good strategy and it's a talking point, but I don't think it's a strategy for that's not
That's
a
my
strategy.
pre-research.
Yeah,
Kinda.
yeah, right. And that's not a strategy for student achievement in there.
Okay.
So
All right.
I think, and it may be, let me think about it some more. And if you think about it some more, you can call me if you need to. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Good evening. Quick question about the meeting with the administrator. So even though it's listed at the top of prompt 2, our meeting and our agenda needs to go all the way through prompt 1 and prompt 2 points when we're talking and presenting with them.
Yes.
Okay, great.
You incorporate as much as you need to incorporate. All of that information is important information. And again, don't go in there, guys, and just read everything to them. Be knowledgeable of your plan and the information that you've done, and be able to talk. This is your opportunity to dress to impress. At this point, you are beginning to showcase your talents. You never know where we've had students, Dr. Revis, last semester. We had students after this presentation, they were invited to present at the district level, and their whole district took this initiative as a district-wide initiative. It was that good. You never know what this is going to do and who you're going to talk to next. And this is where showcasing your talents and your work, this is where people are going to begin noticing you, and they're going to say, after you present, Elizabeth, there's going to be we want it to be the wow effect, and we want your principal and those other leaders that are part of this, we want them to be able to go behind your back and mention your name to somebody. That's how it all starts. So this is really your biggest opportunity to begin showcasing yourself now. Okay, Mandy.
I just have a quick question about our appendices for this task. I know we're supposed to put our appendices in the order they're mentioned in all of our writing. Is it okay, like we can go back and freely refer to prior appendices in this task without having to put them in as new appendices, correct?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
Yes, because when you put it all together at the end, after task 5, when you put it all together into one document, it's going to be there anyway.
Okay, and then if our meeting, like we have a teacher work day on Monday, and my administration would prefer to meet then. So I can write in here before I turn it in on Sunday that we're meeting on Monday, and then go back and add in like we did last time.
Yes, like you did last time. What you're going to do is you're going to turn in as much, all of that writing work has to be done. Your action plan has to be done. You just will not have presented it at this point. And then by the time you resubmit your work, no later than Thursday of next week, all of that will have taken place. Okay?
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And again, if your administration is part of the PLC, make sure that is clear.
I would just say, again, my administration is a part of I would just have a disclaimer in there and say that. Okay, Tanya?
My team has one question about the Zoom. We record the Zoom video with our team meeting, and the Zoom master will upload that to a YouTube channel.
They make a YouTube video and remember that's in your handbook. It tells you how to do that if you don't know how to do that already.
And then they will send all of us the link
The
to the
same
YouTube.
link, and then that's where you
And
go
we-
and upload that to the AAPSL. The peer review Dropbox. Remember, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it's the last thing of the AAPSL, the
Yes.
peer review Dropbox. It's at the bottom, and that's where you submit it.
Does the YouTube link need to be shared with us through our Gardner Web email, or can it be our personal email?
You're not going to share it with us that way. You will,
Okay,
yeah.
we're just going to share the link.
You're going to
And
upload.
put the
yeah.
link. We'll put
And
the link on that peer review completed Dropbox.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
let me remind the Zoom leaders, remind you to make sure that before you submit it or you send it out to your team, that the link works. Make sure that your video link works after the session's over with. And when you send it to Dr. Revis and me, make sure that we have access to open it up. Okay? Sometimes we have had difficulty in the past, and it wouldn't let us open it up because whatever it is on your end, you didn't give us permission to see that. Okay.
Other questions?
Okay, Renee, you got another question or a question?
I do, sir. So our most pressing need was sixth grade Avid ELA,
Right.
and that's where we're going to implement. But I am the sixth grade Avid ELA teacher, so how do I monitor for fidelity on that aspect?
You have do you have a curriculum coach at your school, or you said you had an administrator that was in charge of that you work with Avid, right? Did you not say?
Yes, sir.
Then let your
I did.
whoever that is, let that be the person that monitors you. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Adrian.
Yeah, I see the Bandura on there, but what section was that for? That we needed to use that rest?
That was under teacher efficacy.
This one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If I don't write it down, it's gone.
Okay, that was for teacher efficacy.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Somebody else. Okay, guys, just give us the thumbs up if it all makes sense and you know what you've got to do this week. Okay, and I know you got to think about it. Okay, good. You got to think about it. It will all come together. I promise you that. And again, for the most part, Dr. Revis and I are so proud of where you are. And I will tell you this in closing. I like the fact you don't realize you have taught us some things about APA, and I'm going to tell you why. When this, and I said a couple of years ago, but about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when we had to go from APA 6th edition to 7th edition, we were trained by someone at Gardner Webb. We had to go to Gardner Webb, and Dr. Revis and I sat in that same session along with several others. We were given wrong information. And because we were given work to work from or whatever, we were given wrong information. So the thing I like about this group, it's been, Dr. Revis, this is the first group that has really brought some things to our attention because you've done what you were supposed to do. And I am so impressed with that. And you just don't know, you've taught me some things that I just had taken for granted because that's what I was told. But one of the things I've learned with some things, I won't take it for granted anymore. And I'm not saying I won't miss something, but I like the fact that you have asked us, will you check on the following when you edited this? You know, the books, the APA manual says this. And when I go back, you were right. And I thank you for that. You don't know how much that I'm proud of the fact that you have taken that initiative and you're doing, as far as APA is concerned, you're really digging and doing more than any group that I've had with APA 7th edition. So that means that most of you should be prime candidates for the doctoral program when you get through with this. So,
All right, I'm going to ask some questions for understanding.
okay.
Who can tell me when you start working with your PLC this week, what is one document that you're going to be sure to start working with them on? What is the document you're going to take in that PLC meeting and work with them on?
Action plan.
Very good. Good. Secondly, what things are you going to have prepared before you walk into that meeting? Don't call out yet.
Okay. I'm going to call on somebody. Thomas, tell me one thing you're going to take into that meeting.
I'm going to have my graphic organizer set up pretty well.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Randy, what you going to take into that meeting?
Everything.
Everything. You're going to take everything.
No,
Go
I
prepare
mean,
everything.
I'm gonna take, like you said, graphic organizer. Are you talking about the PLC meeting or the administration?
Your
The PLC meeting. Mhm.
PLC meeting. Yeah, I'm gonna take in parts of that graphic organizer along with some of the research that I've done to provide them with, and we'll stop there for right now.
Okay. Jasmine, can you think of something that they have not thought about?
I don't know. I'm thinking ahead, but probably the timeline and then possibly trying to facilitate who may already do what so that we don't waste a lot of time trying to deliberate who's going to do what in terms of the action to actually get some of the things accomplished is where I'm thinking.
Very good. Larry, can you think of anything else?
No. I was
Okay.
already on the lines of Jasmine
Okay.
because I was thinking about the characters on my PLC and who's strong in what and who's weak in what and how I can build them up.
Okay, good. Dr. Revis, I'll shut up now.
Well, the only thing I would say is, make yourself a list of not only the online program, but, are there other of those strategies that you researched that you want to make sure? For example, I remember reading a couple papers about students with disabilities or your multilingual learners. And in every piece of research, over and over and over again, it was about visuals and graphic organizers were two strategies that really have been shown to be effective in improving the learning of those two groups of students. I mean, if you find that kind of research, those are easy things to implement. And I would I would maybe make myself a list to make sure we get those two strategies in there, as
Right.
well as the online tools. So, make yourself a list of strategies that you would like to see on there so you can prompt them.
Right. And in closing, remember in 2 weeks that you're responsible for 100 hours of your internship. So in 2 weeks, we're going to really focus on that next week, and we're going to delve into how that needs to look. We're going to delve into task 5 and the competencies that you're required to do for the AAPSL, and we're going to help you to show how you can work smart and not harder, and how the work you do for the AAPSL can also help you with your competency folio work that's going to be required at that point as well, because the same competencies that you have to do the 12 for the AAPSL, we're going to require those same 12 competencies to be turned in week 7 as well. And by the time we get to week 8, you will have more than completed half of those competency requirements for your competency folio. You're well on the way to you're 1/3 of the way of this semester tonight. You've completed 1/3 of this semester tonight. And then we've got 2 more weeks, and then week 8, we will go into the AAPTEL, and then week 9, it's fall break for Gardner Webb, not fall break for you to not do work, but we won't come online. So, can you hear me, Dr. Revis? My internet says it's unstable. So there's some reprieve coming.
Yeah.
Dr. Revis,
Yeah, things will start winding down a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, Renee, do you have another question? Okay.
I did. I'm sorry.
So
I'm still, because we're implementing Avid in an Avid classroom. So some of the strategies that we want to implement are directly from Avid. Do I need to say that they're Wicker strategies, or do I need to be very specific on which strategies that we want to deliver?
I would say specific.
I would specific, but now all 5 of your strategies, if you have 5, all of them there needs to be some diversity in your strategies as well. Wouldn't you say, Dr. Revis?
I'll use an example.
Okay.
I'll use an example if you don't mind. So let's say like one of the strategies is note taking. And in my research, I found that note taking enhances reading comprehension.
Right.
So we can use that even though it's an Avid strategy, but to supplement, we can use like reading or online reading program. Is that?
Yeah, that would work as well too. Yes.
Understand.
Yeah. Yeah, that would work.
And guys, and don't forget professional development.
Right.
You've got to have professional development when we're implementing a new program or a program that you guys have had and hadn't been working on and hadn't been using. That needs to be a strategy, professional development.
Right. But we don't just say professional development, specific professional development.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Caroline?
Yes, my principal is not part of my PLC, but as you know from reading my papers, I've had to go around my elbow to make biology work. And and I almost want to invite him to my PLC
They're
just to
they're always invited.
well, specifically invited to say,
Right.
hey, let's get your take. We deliberately, if I say left, he says right. If I say, so just we deliberately picked free, we deliberately picked, you know what I mean? And
Well,
I almost
you know your specific needs, and if that works for you and it's going to make the process better, then I would do, like you said, deliberately invite them to be there.
yeah, because you don't know, he might have ideas since
And
biology was his pick.
yes,
And
I think I would do that, Caroline.
yeah, and it just concerns me because I mean I feel very positive he's going to go with whatever, especially if it's free. But I at the same time he'd be the one that says, "Oh no, I don't want to do it that way."
That's okay. That's okay.
And I'm
Remember,
thinking to myself, "Hey, gee, week 5 and 6, I won't have an assignment because
Right, but I would invite him, Caroline. Adrian?
Okay, I just wanted to ask about the YouTube. Where did you say we can find how to change it to YouTube from the
Okay,
Zoom?
that's in your handbook in Blackboard.
and
And
I
it
think
is
it's in your syllabus too,
in
Adrian.
your syllabus. It's at the very back of your syllabus, and there's a page that tells you step by step how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Katie?
So I want to make sure I'm getting this right. When you say PD can be used as a strategy, we're talking about activity on the action plan, right? And then so like our indicator of success could be 60% of whoever we invited showed up. Because I know you want a number as the indicator of success. Like how do we write that?
Your indicator of success would be the whatever the professional development consisted of, that you monitor the implementation of that with fidelity.
Okay.
So not just attendance, but what did they do after the professional development?
Okay.
Okay, Alicia?
Okay, just for clarification, Dr. Revis, when you were saying strategies, I'm trying to make sure I'm not getting that crossed up. When you speak on strategies, is that the same as when you're talking about the specific activities from the organizer?
Yes,
Oh,
Alicia, I'm sorry. I'm
that's
sorry. I call them strategy, but they're called activities on that organizer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay. So with that being said, with the strategies, our PLC is focusing on informational text, reading, kind of getting back to the basics with the science and the science of reading, those skills that our middle school students are still lacking on, which is hindering their comprehension for informational text. Now, our school just started rolling out this year. We just did like the first couple of trainings with Mastery Connect. So I don't think that would be best as far as, because I don't know how much our principal really wants us to use it just yet, since it's kind of new. But our district has been using MAP. Could I use that as a source as far as like when I'm thinking about data? Because we do take those tests periodically throughout the year.
Yeah,
Right.
you
Whatever
can.
kind of
Go ahead, Dr. Revis.
whatever kind of assessment data that you have, you can use as some of your indicators of success.
But Alicia,
Yeah.
remember too that this is a proposed action plan. So don't go in there thinking that, I mean, he may say no, but he may not say no. So that you just mentioned, I would take it in there if you think it's something that they need.
Okay.
And I think your research is right on target. The last time I looked at research about struggling readers for middle school and even high school, it goes back to those basic things. They have gaps and holes in their learning all the way back to phonics and blends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Got it.
Julie,
You're on target.
Okay. Thank you.
When I met with my PLC, we decided on one online tool, but they were interested in another online tool as well. And so I was going to look into getting that for them as well down the road, and meeting with the instructional supervisors at my district. Can that be an action item or a strategy?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Randy?
Just kind of piggybacking on implementing the PD. So like, as you mentioned, the formative assessment is a pretty much teacher based. So like if you're doing a PD on an online program, could like the formative assessment be that it's implemented in like implemented in teachers' lesson plans? Like,
And
is that
then-
a way to?
Right.
And then
And then,
the summative is the student aspect of using the program, correct?
right. Right. And remember, who's going to be responsible for monitoring that? That could be through a walkthrough or a lesson plan check, you know, those
Okay.
kinds of things
Yes,
too.
sir.
Yes. Yeah. Jasmine?
I have a question. So I reach out to our testing coordinator quite often to get information. She's helped me with this, and she's given me some new information that I didn't have last week. Can I include that, because it kind of is helping to shape still more what I want to work on with them, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yes, you can. Okay. Well, guys, again, use your time wisely. Again, we're not coming together again until week 8 for a Thursday night session. So use your time wisely. And I would build in, you're used to Thursday nights already. So build either Zoom time in, working with your team, or use it as work time specifically, since you're already in the habit of using that time. That's my recommendation. Okay. We will see you next Tuesday. Okay. Good night.
Night.
Okay.